2008, a trip that made history. The new Pope's first visit to the United States. His first chance to directly address American Catholics about the sex abuse scandal enveloping their church.
No words of mine could describe the pain and harm inflicted by such abuse.
For the first time ever, a pope met directly with victims of abuse.
He became the first pope to apologize for the sex abuse crisis in his own voice. He became the first pope to issue an entire document devoted to the sex abuse crisis, and on and on.
But behind the public apologies and historic meetings is a darker, more complicated story.
I think the frustratingly complex answer is that Pope Benedict XVI is both part of the problem and part of the solution on the sex abuse issue.
Joseph Ratzinger was not, and is not, the villain of the sexual abuse crisis in the Catholic Church, in no way, shape, or form. And yet he's not the hero either. He was part of a culture.
David Gibson is a religion reporter and biographer of the Pope.
The power, the authority under the church's canon law was always in his hands to do something. But he always took the slower route. He always took the stalling tactic. That's something I think people still want him to answer for. Why? Why didn't he do more?
For decades before he became Pope, Joseph Ratzinger was a high-ranking Vatican official who, more than anyone beside Pope John Paul, could have taken decisive action to stem the sexual abuse crisis. But critics say and documents show that Pope Benedict's history of dealing with sexual abuse was very troubling, part of a culture of foot-dragging, and perhaps obstruction.
That history begins in Germany, in the small town of Grafing. In 1986, the parish priest Peter Hullermann was convicted of sexually abusing children. But as shocking as the abuse itself was this: Hullermann had molested children before, and church officials knew it.
I was an altar boy in the church that it happened in, and I went to Mass 2 to 3 times a week.
At this church in Essen, Germany, Wilfried Fesselmann says Hullermann abused him 7 years before he was arrested in Grafing. Fesselmann was just 11 years old.
He gave me something to drink, and I had to drink it, and noticed that I started feeling weird. Then he took off his clothes, and told me to take off mine. And then we touched each other, and I had to perform oral sex.
Hullermann was transferred to Munich for therapy. His psychiatrist warned the church he should never be allowed to work with children again. But a few weeks after the transfer, Hullermann was placed in a new, unsuspecting parish. Who oversaw the transfer of a known child molester to the new church? The man known today as Pope Benedict, then known as Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the Archbishop of Munich.
Munich should have suspended him in 1980. Mr. Ratzinger, or whoever, should have made sure he was no longer involved in the church, should have cut him off. This would have saved a lot of victims from him.
The Vatican admits Cardinal Ratzinger approved Hullermann's transfer into his diocese in Munich, but says it was Ratzinger's deputy who placed the pedophile priest in a new parish, a decision the Vatican says Ratzinger was unaware of.
Changes.
Monsignor Charles Scicluna, the Vatican's prosecutor, worked with the Pope for years on sex abuse cases.
He does. Loves
When he sat down with me at the Vatican, it was his first ever television interview on the Pope's record.
Now, we're talking about a big, huge diocese with a minimum of 1,000 priests. The Archbishop of Munich Freising needs a delegate, and he would then delegate his decisions and the follow-up to other people.
And that's totally understandable. But of those 1,000, I would bet you there are not that many sexual molesters. And it's probably pretty easy. That's right. And it's probably pretty easy to keep track of sexual molesters. And my question for you is, maybe it's possible that could Cardinal Ratzinger have done a better job keeping track of his sexual molesters? Knowing
Cardinal Ratzinger, when he delegates something, then you feel that you are responsible. Now, it is very sad. It is very sad. Once you delegate things to people and they put you down, what do? You are frustrated.
If Cardinal Ratzinger in Munich did not know about Father Peter Hullermann, he should have. That's one of the things that an archbishop does. You always know where your priests are. He wasn't minding the store.
Hullermann was finally exposed in 2006. Not by the church, but by Wilfried Fesselmann after undergoing therapy.
I Googled him and immediately found his name and saw that he was working with kids again. I was totally shocked and astonished how this could happen.
The Vatican says when Ratzinger moved on from his post in Munich, he also left the Hullermann problem behind.
It is only appropriate that once you have a successor in place, the responsibility is his.
Where was Benedict all these years when this priest was abusing other kids? Why didn't he say something? As the sexual abuse scandal exploded into the 80s and into the 90s, didn't he ever check back and sort of say, you know, that guy, Father Peter Hullermann, maybe you should check and see where he's at?
The Pope himself has never addressed the issue.
How many other abusive priests may have come under his jurisdiction while he was in Munich, Archbishop? We don't know.
After 5 years as Archbishop of Munich, Ratzinger was tapped for a major promotion to a position at the Vatican where he would become directly involved with some of the most notorious sex abuse cases in the United States.